supposedly going.
Hi everyone, I'm Rick Zanotti, and this is eLearnChat, where it's all about learning, or other things, like we'll find out today. I am joined by my good friend and co-host. She's a genius. We had a show a couple of minutes ago, and we all agreed she's a genius. She's great. Anyway, it's Dr. Susan Nash. How are you, Susan?
I think that was my Chat GPT simulacrum.
I see. Well, today we're going to talk about Chat GPT and see where that takes us. What do you think? Will it take
I
us
love
anywhere?
it.
We really do wonder, where is it going to take us?
Well, I know that New York schools don't think it's going to take anybody any place good.
No. We'll talk about that too. Here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation, Digital Learning, Corporate Video, Learning Design, and Management Consulting. Visit us at www.relatecasts.net. Thanks.
So I guess we can start by asking, what is Chat GPT?
That's a good question. What is Chat GPT? And it's by the way, it's put out by OpenAI.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting a lot of publicity right now.
I tried it out. Did you try it?
Not yet. I've looked at articles and podcasts about what it does, but I haven't actually looked at it yet.
It's pretty easy to use. You have to set up an account, and then once you do, you just click on the different screens, and then it gives you. I just did the free one, and it gives you a chance to ask it little query questions on the bottom, and then you can watch it generate things. And I tried a number of things. I first asked it to define critical minerals, and it did it.
It did it.
Yeah, and it did it. It wrote syntax that was, well, it reminded me of what you would get if you asked Google a question. So that very basically level, it did that, and then I asked it questions like so it came up with lithium and chromium and cobalt and different ones that are defined by USGS, etc. And so then I asked it to describe to tell you where you could find each mineral. I'd want each one by one and the controversies. And so it did that, but it was super repetitious. Like, it used exactly the same verbiage at the end. There are controversies in the use of resources and water and things like that, exploitation of labor. So it's like, I just didn't, I don't know. I can see how people who are maybe in junior high or high school or college, I don't know, they could copy and paste that stuff for their homework or short answer questions in a quiz.
And I've looked at some of the results of how it generates pictures, and that's been engendering a lot of bad feelings from a lot of people, especially graphic artists, fine artists, large companies like Getty Images, iStock. I don't know if Adobe Stock yet, but they're all chiming in. And, by the way, they are being sued. This is Chat GPT already has 3 major lawsuits against it. One of them is from Getty Images, who's big. They're owned by Microsoft. And a whole mess of smaller ones, plus those 3. And I couldn't find out what the names of the other 3 were, but there was a Reveal.com and a whole mess of other ones. There's a lot of lawsuits coming. And it makes sense, because what's happening is when you ask it to say, oh, I want to see a cat on a beach running after a camel, it'll find it. It'll find images and composite them into a brand new original image. Well, one problem: it's not original. It's taking copyrighted materials and it is compositing it. Excuse me. It gets allergy-like up here in Boise. Anyway, and that's what all the graphic artists, all the people who make money, this is not royalty-free. It's taking whatever art it can find, however it can find it, and it's using it without permission, without any royalties paid. And that you would think would be an obvious no-no. What do you think, Susan?
Well, yes, especially since you can use AI to determine where those original pixels came from. Then you could just run an analysis that they weren't the premise is that, oh, it's creating something new, absolutely new and original. But in reality, it isn't. It's, like you said, it's creating a composite from existing images to the point where they're not reconfigured. They are just copying and pasting and modifying the existing art. And each one is going to have its own signature that's going to be traceable back to its origin. And I was going to try to run the critical minerals experiments I did through turnitin.com. I didn't have time, but it would be interesting to see how those go back to the original sources.
Yeah, and from what all these other people are saying, it's just hijacking their art, their videos, whatever you can find. It's basically highlighting it. So
it's taking it. Yeah.
It's taking it. It's taking
it. Yeah. It's like, so if you're going to buy paint, you need to pay for your paint.
Right.
And this is even more customized. Well, yesterday I was in a meeting and I was talking to a couple of people and they were talking, oh, I used it to generate code, some Python code. And yes. I thought, did it generate it or did it search through its databases and copy and paste from GitHub?
That's what it's doing. It's actually copying and pasting from existing code or code requests, and therefore it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, and so that's dangerous because you think you have something. If you don't know really how to program Python, and you don't know how to read critically what it's actually doing,
right?
You could be having it pull the wrong things from a database or adding stuff to a database and completely destroying your system.
Yeah. So, to me, it's gimmicky. It's not quite there yet, and that's very typical of most artificial intelligence. Let's not forget, most of artificial intelligence is based on pattern matching.
Exactly. Pattern matching it is.
Yeah. And so it's matching patterns, whether the pattern is code or whether the pattern is a video, a graphic, something from textbooks, other books. That's another area. Speaking of textbooks, it is being banned in more colleges, universities, and high schools, and more being added every day. You mentioned, I think, at the beginning, New York. Is that the whole city school system?
I think so. Or the New York State. They have a New York State United.
Yes, universities.
Union. Maybe it was something like that. But I don't know how they can actually ban it. How are they going to? I mean, if you put it on your, I guess you can't.
They can ban it by just in your firewall. They can just block anything going to ChatGPT or coming in from.
Well, you'd have to be logged into their system.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. So you can't use it if you're on one of. You can't. Yeah, right. But if you're
on campus or. And it's a little scary, I think, because it is AI-ish, but not really. It's not artificial intelligence. All it is a clever routine to mix and match things based on patterns and requests into something else. And like you said, who's to say where they're matching from and if it really makes sense? You know,
Well, I can say that I did have it produce poems.
did you really?
And there was where it's very dangerous. Okay, so it creates the most disgusting doggerel. So for the first poem, the first poem I had to do a poem, write a poem about a shark and a panda. And so it started out, and it has end rhyme. It doesn't have any like rhythm that's recognizable. It wasn't in iambic pentameter or anything, but it was. Then it did. So it started out. The panda is fluffy and nice. I feel like something just sing songy end rhyme, describing and defining the panda. Then it described and defined the the shark, and then it talked about how they were different, and then how they were similar, and how they were they're like ending in this thing of unity and
Hmm.
we're together. So then I thought, okay, well let's try whale shark and tiger shark. Same thing, but except it's like the attributes of I'm big, I have a big appetite, I have a big mouth, etc. And
Hmm.
then the second one is tiger eye stripes, and I'm aggressive. And then it's like the differences, and then together. It's like, oh my
So
gosh,
it's
that's
kind of
such a pattern.
mixing and matching things.
Yeah, and it even used exactly the same end rhyme in the lines in the second
Ah.
at each poem. But then I thought, okay, how about the struggles of a marathon runner?
Hmm.
So that took a little bit longer, and then it came up with something end rhymey and equally predictable, and with the satisfying ending of the runner. The runner was sweating, and then the runner was hurting, and then the runner won.
That's pretty deep.
Super deep.
Super deep. So it's interesting. Do you remember years ago? This is a long time ago. Eliza. Eliza was one of the very first
Oh,
AI packages that was done. I think it was done in Forth. It was either Lisp or Forth. These are for those who don't know. Those are AI programming languages. Well, you had Prolog, you had Lisp, and you had Forth.
I
Those are
remember
the three
Prolog.
popular ones back when.
Yeah, long
Long ago. I'm
ago.
talking probably 70s. And
Yeah.
Eliza was basically your personal psychoanalyst. So you would
Oh
go,
my gosh.
and Eliza would
I
say,
don't remember knowing much about that. How
"Have
did
you
it
ever tried
work?
it?"
No, how did
I,
it work?
I think you can still find it. But anyway, you go in and it says, "Hello, how are you?" And you say, "I'm fine. What's your name?" "My name is Rick." "Have you always had that name?" "Yes." "Who gave that name to you? Your mother or father?" "My mother." "Do you like your mother?"
Oh my gosh.
"No." How long have you not liked your mother?" "Many years." "In those years, did you like your father?" And it takes this whole psychoanalysis thing. Sometimes it's sort of funny because it really comes up with some weird stuff. But if you look at the code, it's nothing but tables and pattern matches. And it cleverly
Okay,
puts them together
yes.
because in the variables, it's keeping the words that you're using
Uh-huh.
and it's responding to that. And in those
I
days,
remember having,
it was not oral. It was all typewritten or written on a monitor. But it's really clever. And it wasn't a ton of
yeah,
code, but enough code.
I remember having to program, you might want to change the shot because I think we need a two shot now, but
Oops.
so I remember learning how when we were doing code, to do those types of things where you would do fortune telling.
Yes.
And it
Um,
wasn't really fortune telling, but it would select amongst um,
it's
different
like,
weighted.
yeah, it's almost like the magic 8 ball.
Yeah.
You shake it, and all of a sudden something comes out. And we did a couple of apps like that for the fun of it, where we had one, oh, I think we called it your inner, I think it was like your inner guru or something like that. And it was on iPhone, and you would have to think a question. This is really a cop out, right? So you think a question, and then you either shake it or press a button, and it goes. And it has, I think there were 125 or 30 canned responses. Things like, look west, the answer will be there. Or another one, it would say something like, why do you always ask me questions? And so we had a lot of those. It took us a whole, I think, 10 minutes to write the app. And then it took probably about a week of learning how to write Objective-C back then. And now you could do it more quickly with Swift. But it was fun. It was fun. And so we tried it out on our daughter's friends, who were all probably 18 or 15, or they were like in their teens, late teens, actually. And they all started laughing. They thought it was funny. So we went, okay, that's kind of a hit. And I don't know how many we sold. I think it was free, actually. But anyway, it was fun. It was kind of a fun, stupid app. And from there, it wasn't hard to do either. You just have a database of phrases. You have random numbers. You generate a random number, and that goes to the phrase. And then you had something to check so that you don't get the same random number in the same session. So that way you don't get
Oh,
duplicates.
okay. Yeah.
Which a lot of apps don't do, because they just get lazy and just give you the same answer 22 times in a row. And it could happen. But you're right. And people love anything that they think, like a fortune cookie. Look at fortune
Oh,
cookies.
yeah. It's like those silly little online I Ching type
Yes,
of
same thing.
things. Yeah.
Same thing.
And I mean, and people actually use those and they think, okay, they're, I don't know, just some kind of divination tool. And it's
Which it
like,
was at one point, but it wasn't computerized.
right, right. And yeah. And then, yeah, so I guess you're supposed to just like really, really focus before you touch the computer and let your aura affect it. But
Right.
But then thinking of AI, I noticed that whenever we do a webinar at and use Zoom at APG,
Mm-hmm.
there's always somebody who will sign up with Fred Fireflies.
Fred Firefly.
And so anyway, so I was like sending out a little notice to attendees, and so Fred. So one of these was Fred Firefly. So I get this response from Fred Firefly saying, "Thank you. I'm so glad you selected me as your AI bot for note taking."
That's funny. Fred
So it
Firefly.
automatically goes through and like, I guess, you can get a transcription with Zoom, but I guess
Mm-hmm.
it automatically goes through and organizes it somehow. And I thought, I'm going to sign up for that just to see exactly how it's mangling things.
It, it's it's just interesting, and of course, all those language things where they are taking or how should I put it? As you're speaking, text to speech or speech to text, they're not
Oh,
bad. So they're getting a
they
lot
don't
better.
know. You've gotten better.
They're getting a lot better, but you can get some really weird. Every so often, when it goes off the rails, it's like, what did it just come up with? And it could be
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
awful. And so when people think they can not have to check that before they send it out, you really have to check, because it's not what you might think it is. They get 80 to
Exactly.
95% now.
Hmm.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, it just depends. It depends on, also it depends a lot on your signal
Hmm,
and how well it's sampling.
that's true.
But yeah, I think one of the things I've was doing for a while is I was dictating using just it's built into Microsoft Word now at 365. I think it sort of integrates in with Trans Google, or I don't know which speech to text thing it
Right.
does. And I finally kind of got tired of having to proofread it. It was so exhausting.
Mm,
And I know people used Dragon a long time ago,
I used to use it.
and that you could train that, but I'm not sure that you can actually train any of the ones that just come mixed in with your that come packaged in with your Office 365.
Yeah. I mean, they've gotten better if you have a fairly clear voice. there's a good chance
Hmm.
it'll probably understand you. If you have any kind of accent or intonation, let's say you have a deep Southern accent, there's a good chance it won't get half of it. Or if you
Right. And
have,
specialized vocabulary.
yeah, it just doesn't know where to pick up. It'll get the words confused, or it just won't even translate them. And not perfect. Now, there are other systems right now which are capturing, and this has a lot of people irritated and wanting to sue. They're capturing voices and then they're using those in AI things, and the voices sound pretty good, almost as good as the real
Oh,
person. And real voiceover talents are really getting angry at this because they're saying,
I
"Hey, it's
didn't
taking
know.
our business
I
away."
didn't know that was happening.
Oh, a lot
Wow.
for about 2 years now. I'm
Mm.
trying to remember what the name of there's one package in particular. It just slipped my mind. But they're very popular, and people are pretty, well, at least voice talents and others, singers, they're just really unhappy with what's going on because they're using their voice in projects for free. And
I didn't realize that because
yeah,
like they you used to be able to like I don't know they you choose your voice and
mm-hmm.
it was like there was Bob early version it was called Bob and you'd use
Yes,
it to um, text to speech and it
mm-hmm.
was for like you go into your library and tended to be it couldn't be a PDF it was like um, HTML and it was like JAWS or something it would speak to you but it would be um, like published report, email, hello.
Right, yeah. So it's sort of interesting, but if we take that back to the Chat GPT, I don't know what its future is going to be because right now they've got major lawsuits going on. And I don't know who's funding it. The OpenAI project I thought was a public domain or org.project, but I'm not sure who's behind it. I didn't do the research. But they're already getting into trouble with big, deep pocket lawyer firms, in other words,
Mhm.
Microsoft and others, who have no problem suing somebody like that. And to everybody, I've talked to several people who are graphic artists already and designers, and they're all going, they should be put out of business. so so there's, they have no doubt about it. Just it's wrong. Don't do it. So
Well, there's something that's changing too. There used to be a lot of um, enthusiasm for open data, for
mm,
example,
yeah,
in oil and gas or public domain data, et cetera. Well, that's kind of changing, especially like when it comes to subsurface data.
mm,
Because people think they want to create their own markets for processing the data for
oh,
multiple purposes.
right,
So the same data that you used for, say, an oil and gas reservoir can now be used to see how can we use that for carbon dioxide storage.
interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know what. How do you think this would be used in e-learning? I have some ideas because people are always looking for a shortcut to write or do something else. But my fear is somebody would say, I need a course in sexual harassment. I haven't tried this. I want to see, will it generate a course? Or will it find a course and give it to you? And now you're going to get in trouble if somebody finds out you just stole somebody else's course.
I suspect you could use it, you could train it to populate your well, okay, can it really write good learning objectives? I don't know.
I don't
I
think
think
so.
that what it can do is, as an instructional designer or even a domain expert, to say, no more generic questions like, describe the Taj Mahal.
Right.
Instead, change it so that, like, um, imagine that you've been asked to renovate the Taj Mahal and fix 10 different things in it.
Hmm.
How would you do that?
With great difficulty. I don't think it could.
Yeah, it couldn't answer something like that. So that
Can it?
means that you have to. Well, I don't know. Maybe it could, but let's say that you have to write prompts that are not so obvious.
Right.
with short essay, but with multiple choice, uh, could it write good psychometrically valid multiple choice questions? That would be wonderful.
I
I
I
hate
don't
I hate
think
writing those
it
things.
could. I mean, it might, but I'm not so sure. I mean, it would have to really be able to understand the content, and
Yeah.
and a pattern matching system would need an awful lot of patterns to match to figure that out. That would be my
Well,
thought.
if you have your right answer and your distractor, which is
Hmm.
like just a couple of words different than the right answer, I can see it doing that.
Yeah,
But which
yeah,
concept is it actually testing?
that's true. And how would it know? Because again,
Yeah,
this
and it
isn't
does,
this isn't
and it,
original. It's been trained to look at things and try to come out with things that are similar to what you're asking. Again, pattern recognition. It's pretty hard to find a pattern for a whole course that would make sense.
well, and the other thing too is that we forget that we are pattern animals, and that's what we
That's
call
right.
intelligence. And in there, I mean, can't even tell you how many Sherlock Holmes types of detective stories, like Psych and all these other
Hmm.
like theories that are kind of quirky, but they're all about the superhuman ability to detect deviations from an expected pattern.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people say intelligence is the ability to recognize patterns quickly, manipulate them, and come back with some sort of answer or hypothesis or solution to something. And
Well, and that
the faster you can do that, the smarter people maybe think you are. Because
but you're
sometimes
still a prisoner. You're a prisoner of the original pattern.
that's right.
Either way.
Yeah, so that's where it gets interesting because people who recognize patterns don't necessarily know what to do with them. And that's frankly true. You may see the pattern. You can go, oh, that's a this, that's a that. Well, how do you combine them? I don't know. Now you have to be able to combine patterns. And, when you're thinking of things that, for example, if you're writing code, you may have reentrant code where you leave a piece of code, but now you have to come back to the code. How would it figure that out? Not easily. Not easily.
Right.
It's hard enough for a
Well,
programmer to do that.
and that's a little bit about what deconstructive philosophy was all about too. Is like, okay, this is a fragment of a pattern. Where did that pattern? Who decides what pattern is
Hmm.
legitimate?
Hmm.
Where are the power structures here? Who's in charge and why?
That's interesting. And yet, you know what's interesting? Something that we can do, but it's pretty hard for a computer. Let's say, for example, we're blindfolded and they put um, a mouse, maybe a toy mouse, and they only let you touch one part of it. You may feel the tail and you go, okay, this is an animal and it could be, what is this? It's not a snake. What could it be? It's this kind of tail. But you're not allowed to move past it. You may come up with something. You may say, oh, there's a mouse tail. Or they give you the head of the mouse. Now it's a little trickier because it's got kind of a pointy nose. The ears can be maybe flat, maybe they're bigger. Huh, it's a dog. No, it'd be a very small dog. It's a little puppy. No, maybe it's a bat, maybe it's and they might have a hard time just touching, but humans can do that. They can touch
Hmm.
things and usually have an idea of what it is. You touch uh, you know, a part of a body and you can tell what that part is. You can touch objects on your desk and you know exactly what they are. So these are all things that we can do as humans. But with a computer, you would have to have an object that can feel, that could sense, that could see, and then had enough patterns to put it together and figure out what it is. That's not easy, especially
Well,
physical.
yeah, and like I guess to a certain degree, like drones have on board this collision avoiders, etc.
Hmm.
It's all about the sensors, and so how
Yeah.
effectively are the sensors sending out information and having it transmit back? I mean, you could have visual sensors, temperature sensors, whatever.
And look at what happens with cars. The self-driving cars, they've had a lot of
Oh yeah.
accidents. I know somebody who broke his back in a self-driving car. He survived
Oh
it,
wow.
fortunately. But he was in a Tesla, and two-lane road, a guy ran into his lane, and Tesla ran right into him. No
Mm.
avoidance, nothing. It just hit it. And maybe speed was part of the issue. Maybe it was at night. But the thing is,
Hmm.
it's really hard to drive a car, even by yourself, when you were going at high speeds and looking at what's ahead. Now, a car with extremely good sensors has a hard time doing that too. The refresh
Hmm.
rate on the cameras has to be very fast. It has to be interpreted even more quickly. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Oh yeah.
I don't think we're
And
there
then
yet.
you're a hostage to battery life.
Well, yeah, everything just stops, and there's a big truck
Yes.
coming at you. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not good. But anyway, I don't know. I think this technology is very interesting. I think at this moment it's sort of gimmicky. We're not there yet. Could it be really useful? I don't know. For example, if you're a surgeon and you run into a situation, which does happen during surgery, and they have to look something up, maybe it could help, but it would really have to be programmed ahead of time to find out what a surgeon would need and all the possible things they could encounter, and then see if it was smart enough to come up with a procedure.
Well,
That's
and if you're
tough.
a programmer, I mean, instead of having to comb through all the different quote cookbooks, and you just like it's one stop shopping where it goes and combs through and comes up with
Hmm.
some code. Now, how well would it actually work? I guess it depends on how you describe it and the code, the language itself, etc. I think it would probably work for simple tasks using popular languages.
Hmm. So it could, but again,
Yeah.
simple. I think the key word there is simple tasks. For example, if
Hmm.
you're a surgeon, all you need to have is the language to identify what you're trying to do, and then it could come up with some document or some video of how to do it. That
Right.
could be done pretty
Yeah.
easily, because that's just linking something. It's just like going to Google and having an appliance that could search on what you're asking, and you'll have that library of everything you do. So that makes sense. But I don't know. It's tricky. So anyway, if you're in the audience and you're watching right now and you're playing with GPT because you have nothing better to do, get back to work. No, just kidding. Uh, um, think about it. If you have any questions, send them along. We'll talk about it next time, because this is something we're going to see more and more of in the future. Will it be
Hmm.
good? Will it be bad? Will it be sued out of existence? We don't know yet. It'll be interesting. What do you think, Susan?
I don't know. I think that they can try to sue it and it will spring up in some other form because
Hmm.
we, kind of have that already in certain search engines.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Um,
And
the thing that I feel that would be nice is if it could help you think deeply and put together more complex thought. And it seems to be doing absolutely the opposite of that.
right. Yep. So jury's out. We'll see what happens and when till the jury gets in there. Then we'll see what they come up with. Um,
Run!
so we'll see. Run. Yep. Anyway, well, thank you, folks, for joining us today. We will see you very soon on eLearnChat. Have a good one, everyone. Bye, Susan.
Thank you. Bye.